Coyote. At dusk comes the thief, the shy artist, gliding above the pasture's stubble, stealing swift past the cows and vanishing into shadows of fence and ditch. Tucked into the surrounding hills, some half-dead critter is just now sagging towards soil. What happens tonight under fang and claw will happen tomorrow under beak and talon. It's cutthroat politics, the old who gets what when. Yesterday's paper. Every morning, newspapers were stacked fresh and clean on the busy sidewalk. Hustling to work, people paused to glance at the headlines, believing what they read. We took comfort in the news no matter what it told. The perfectly folded pages mattered more than the story. New lovers. So much happens in a young man's body when he first confesses fear to a woman beside the tidewaters rushing into the shoal. Beach leaves skim across the sand as the evening breeze lifts her dress into a butterfly. Marriage, I gather, it might mean something to you too. Marriage. Half of marriage is the sound of her voice when dishes linger dirty in the sink. The tone you notice and how it feels. Whether words push or pull. Whether careless or considered. And what lies between the words? Silence as patience, as hurt, as invitation, as the tension in the tethering. Caress is the other half. Animal to animal, we long to be touched in that same original way, over and over, and for all the right reasons. No doubt, every marriage is shaped by choices, intent, effort, and all. But I'm talking about sheer luck of the draw, how we happen to be with each other. Marriage.
Marriage.
The mouth. Not some forgotten part of the body, the spleen, or a hair on the rim of an ear. The mouth is wide, like a city. Like horns in traffic, most words are useless and annoying. They make a mess of family, friends, and the country. Lying between head and heart, it takes all our lives to tune the tongue true. Even then, there's plenty that flits in from who knows where. Then suddenly, it's spewing some silly nonsense all over again. What can one do but cringe and hope for the best? Making poems. Making a poem is less deliberate than hauling semis, less delirious than kissing a new bride, less weighty than Hebrew scripture. The hand delights to steal down the page like summertime boys out hunting garter snakes among the creek rocks. Words wander like pilgrims who peer into empty houses, empty windows along a dusty road. They cling together and fall in line, not for beauty nor destiny, but for a man's slender need to repaint his front door on a Saturday morning whim. Crows choose their perch as if by random, claim it like a watchtower, then suddenly are gone. Neither is there any sturdy reason for making poems. So on Sunday, there was a magnificent event at the Mountaineers where we celebrated the life and the untimely death of a friend of mine of almost 40 years, Doreen Harris. And she had died of about 2 months ago of a brain tumor, leaving a husband and 2 teenage daughters. So there were tears, but it was beautiful. It was a very powerful 250 people celebrating her life. Stories without end. This poem I like to think of as my honoring of those who come before us, whether that was 5,000 years ago or whether it was Doreen. It's called Layers, and tonight it's with Doreen in mind. Layers. I pray to pray in the ancient way, with cross and candle, body and blood, an hour before dawn. Like Jeremiah in his heft and sadness, trusting the world to suffer on. Trusting in a slow God, bent low toward things spent and unhappy. I believe in layers, spread flat and thin, like paint across the centuries. The press of the dead, their efforts and losses, achievements and pleasures. And what they know now, they watch us all, covering us in just, honest measure. I pray to remember. And my last little poem, Give and Take. And that's what we're doing here tonight, giving and taking. What shall we look upon today that might become us tomorrow? The bare branch against winter's gray sky, or the tender open face now hurrying by? We take what we are given, then we give it back. Thank you.
So I'm a member of the African American Writers Alliance, and we have a book launch coming up on Saturday at the Highline Heritage Center in downtown Burien. And this is our new book, Black Writers Unmasked. Now some of you have heard some of these poems, but I think I'll start with one that, well, that you haven't heard. So it's springtime, and I work for Kubota Garden Foundation. I don't know how many of you have been to Kubota Garden, but it's quite a stunning place. And working there, working for the foundation, I learned so much about the man who was at the beginning and the heart of the garden. So I've written a poem for him. Fujitaro Kubota. This world is filled with men dreaming of heroic conquest, who ravage the earth and all her inhabitants with fear and humiliation to accumulate the trinkets of the day. Time's laughter echoes on the dust they leave behind as temporal memory to vanity, their names etched in letters no longer decipherable. How precious, then, a man who plants his heart deep into the soul of a place, his hands the instruments of hope, forgiveness, joy, who grows beauty in the desert of despair, and life in the dry, rocky ground of isolation and hate, who sees beyond what is present to slowly, deliberately craft the future. His laughter echoes back in time as Earth celebrates his existence with her bounty, each leaf, every blossom, the gurgling of each stream whispers his name for eternity. Let me turn to my section of the book. It's an anthology, and so it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of have everybody reading. Okay, Never Ending. This is inspired by a sculpture. Our feet planted on this iron rock, we look to the sky to view what our sun chooses to illuminate, knowing our souls call us beyond these feeble limits to follow the steely determination of our imaginations until we find the source of our waking dream. Grace. You drove me deep, deep down into the well, till my pleading eyes were out of your sight, and the wail of my spirit beyond your hearing. You did not know the walls were made of gold, and the sweet river of life ran below. A lost diamond of the patriarchal society. You covered me in darkness. Unaware, the moon and stars became my playmates. You took away the sunlight, not seeing my roots growing beneath your feet. You separated me from sight. Oblivious, I fomented revolution in the shadows. Just because you can't see me doesn't mean I'm not there. Spring blossoms. Recognize the fallow time, when nothing happens above ground, as earth feeds seeds in darkness and earthworms turn detritus from the active seasons into mulch and peat and dirt. Does the seed despair of the blackness that surrounds it? Does it fear transformations happening within? Is it aware there is possibility in its future? Can it tell what will become? Then comes the violent moment. The seed bursts and life surges upward against gravity, forces its way toward the sun, pushes the darkness out of its way, losing part of its protective coating, unsure what the consequences will be, aware it can no longer stay confined in comfort, proclaims itself a new thing upon the earth. We smile at the crocus or the daffodil, not comprehending the revolution behind its birth, dangerously diminishing the potential of our own insurgency. Prequel. Who doesn't love the river? Excuse me. Who doesn't love the river? Bustling, caroming, lollygagging, drifting, nurturing the willow with the tadpole and the daffodil with the crocodile, coursing through valleys, jumping down gulches, leaping over canyon walls, carrying dreams of generations. But who is it loves the blizzard, stopping us in our tracks, impeding commerce, inconveniencing our daily plans, adding snow to the mountaintops, building frozen lakes that nurture headwaters until spring's warm breath sets them free to become the river? Dark matter. We are the black firmament of all beginnings, birthing stars and moons, planets and comets. We are the force, holding celestial reality in suspension with imagination, sparking life from the collision of aspiration and determination. We are the force, focusing thought into action, squeezing reality out of dream time, revealing life disguised as endings, carving paths through shifting sands of memory. We are the force between letters and words, notes and melodies, numbers and formulas, quarks and beings. We are the force, coaxing seeds beyond their shells, singing buds into blossoms, dancing fields into universes of life, feeding the planet. We are the unseen, the unacknowledged force, holding meaning in place, birthing reality from fantasy. We are the force, nurturing nations' souls with music, dance, art, and theater, nourishing the world with kernels carried from ancestral memory. We are the dark matter, binding time to space, defining the existence of all things, animating the inanimate. Our extinction signals the unraveling of universes, seen and unseen. We are the force. One of my long COVID symptoms is my voice dries up. This very weird thing if you're someone who's spoken for decades and all of a sudden can't speak for more than 10-15 minutes. Anyway, this poem I wrote just after.
Do you want some water?
No, it's fine. Okay. Just that, no, because that would make me cough worse.
Okay.
This poem I wrote right after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. The birth of generational trauma. A baby was born in Kiev's subway today. An old woman sat in her apartment, alone in a wheelchair, watching bombs explode across her city, wondering who will gather her things. A young man realized he will never again receive his chemotherapy treatments. A father knew his dialysis will never resume. A mother stared at the remaining insulin vials for her 7-year-old. Employees understood their paychecks will never come. In 20 years, they will publish a former soldier or a former Russian soldier, his confessional. The next Amy Tan, her mother's journey to freedom. The next, excuse me, the next Bob Woodward, the Kremlin's damning documents. 10 years ago, a power-hungry fool killed Trayvon Martin. This week, a power-hungry fool attacked Ukraine. Today, a baby was born in Kiev's subway. And not to leave y'all on a completely depressing note, although these times do certainly call for that, re-evolution. So it is, we come again to the fork between extinction or change. History holds out hope and despair. Generations electing competitive wars, generations choosing collaborative peace. Can we redefine winning to bring wholeness? Will we re-envision power to empower community? Do we see paths forward to create a new reality? We whose footfalls drum the earth and hearts beat to her song, whose eyes see future generations and ears hear stories yet unspoken. We who feel the universe's breath, whispering wisdom from multitudes of ancestors who have stayed behind to till the soil and clean the watery veins. We are the tenders, finding our way back, making ways out of no way, building connections where they have been broken by greed and domination. We missionaries, inviting Earth to join the chorus of the universe. Let go the ways leading back to nowhere. Take the path to the new way of human being. Join the new dance of life.
Well, anyhow, during the 2 years plus of the plague, I had a long time to, sit at home and indulge in self-reflection and contemplation. And I came to the realization that my basement full of personal papers is probably not going to be purchased by the Yale University Library and housed there in their permanent collection. In fact, my ashes probably won't even be cold before my kid sends it to the landfill. So I put out 2 books on my own to have a permanent record of whatever the hell I was doing with my life for the past 60 years plus. The first book is entitled The Diary of Nanette Jenkins, Volume 1, A Tale of Old Seattle. And it is, these stories were written over 30 years ago, so it's a little time capsule. I'm going to read you a couple entries. 1. I was telling Stanley the other night that I was going to make Seattle my own personal Paris of the soul. He lowered the paper at my pronouncement. His brow furrowed. He was trying to understand me, the poor dear, but he never would. Still, I loved him. I loved the simple things he brought me, like a lot of money. But I longed for understanding, too. Finally, Stanley spoke. I just don't get this Larson guy. Everyone thinks he's funny, but I don't get it. Look at this. Is this supposed to be funny? You know what I think? I think only a bunch of goddamn posers could laugh at this stuff. That's what I think. I'm going to make Seattle my own personal Paris of the soul. Fuck Stanley. Roberto is insane. I think I love him. He says he understands me too, but I wonder, as he can't even feed himself without help. Oh, he can eat all right. It's just going to the supermarket he can't handle. He will walk in, get a cart, and fill to overflowing with one item, say kidney beans. Then he'll go to the express line and exclaim, I am a poet, I need beans. The trouble is, then he'll try to buy all the beans for the price of 1 can, indignantly yelling at the cashier, after all, it is only one item. I'm taking care of Roberto right now because he is a genius. Went to Walter's today to discuss the publication of my book of erotica, The Tongue Lashing and Other Wet Punishments. Walter said it was very fine. The writing, he said, reminded him of a female Bukowski. Either that, or he said I looked like a female Bukowski. I couldn't tell. Walter's office is located over the Greyhound terminal, and it gets pretty noisy sometimes. I feel he understands me, though, and that's the important thing. All right, this goes on for thousands and thousands and thousands of other words. So, the other book I put out is called "À la recherche du temps perdu," or "Get Off My Lawn." It is somewhat a chronicle of my life's journey from Boy Rambeau to Boomer Crank. And actually the entire last half of the book is pretty much a dedication to the city of LA, because I'm the only person in the Pacific Northwest who likes LA, and I spent several formative years there, and I'm quite fond of it. Plus, it's my dream now that I'm old and don't like the cold. I have like 6 months of the year where I could be, on the Venice boardwalk, declaiming these and being in the warm sun from like November to March. Anyhow, I'm going to read a poem entitled "L.A. The Big Heist," The Big Heist, L.A. 1980. It's kind of a chronicle of what I was doing instead of going to college. And as a historical document, this poem was set in a time where they had just invented smokable cocaine, which is a small footnote that you might be interested in. Anyhow, The Big Heist, LA, 1980. We smoked the resins off the screens of our pipes and walked to the Church Bazaar, a block from Hollywood Boulevard and Grauman's Chinese. Doug, Howard, Susie, and I played the ring toss and penny pitch, watched the rickety rented Ferris wheel, waiting for a child to fall. 4 fresh-faced kids from someplace else, enjoying a night of innocent fun in LA. On the way back, we bought a bottle of cheap tequila and played guitars at Howard's place, a house owned by Jane Mansfield's ex-boxer husband, singing, "No more juice in the morning, no more breakfast in bed, do your own laundry, because your mother's dead." We often wondered why we weren't stars yet. Words cannot describe the foul stench of this place, which we had all grown totally accustomed to. The sandbox in the kitchen was filled past overflowing with cat shit from Florentine and Oedipus, the mutant 6-toed kittens Howard had gotten in February to provide an air of normalcy and responsibility to his life. The box had not been cleaned in months, and cats being cats, Flo and Eddie made the entire house into a huge cat box. There wasn't a square inch of the carpet that hadn't been soaked in cat urine, repeatedly. Doing a shot of tequila, Howard pointed at the ceiling where a petrified lump of cat shit hung like a stalactite. "I found that there one night when I came home," Howard explained. "Etienne said he had nothing to do with it, but I saw the guilt in his eyes." Etienne was a 19-year-old French-Canadian kid who worked with Howard at Lady Snow's Smoke Menagerie, where freebase pipes were sold under the legal guise of being called chemical extraction kits. Etienne had moved out of the house a couple weeks back, for reasons none of us could fathom, leaving Howard stuck with the full rent. Silently drinking, we inwardly cursed the cat-hating bastard Etienne, envisioning the squalid picture of the Canuck son of a bitch flinging blameless kittens into the air as they projectile defecated in mewling feline terror. "He must be punished," Howard suddenly screamed. "My babies shall have vengeance." Unfortunately, the SPCA office was closed, it being past midnight and all, so there was nothing for it but for Howard and I to drain the tequila, leap into my girlfriend's car, and drive to Etienne's room in a seedy one-room building off Sunset in Vermont with the purpose of robbing him blind. The fact that Etienne was dealing dope and we were all out had nothing to do with the high moral tone of our quest, which in our minds reached the heights of a biblical tale of justice as we cruised down Sunset Boulevard, singing the theme from Mission Impossible at the top of our lungs. As we parked around back of Etienne's place, the Chevette's engine sounding like a DC-10, nerves suddenly set in. We counted windows till we came to the apartment we hoped was his. "I think he's at work until 1, said Howard. "Geez, maybe this is kind of stupid." That was Howard all over, working others up into a vitriolic frenzy and then getting all ambiguous on you at the moment of execution. Luckily, I was made of sterner stuff, and wrapping a hammer in a towel, smashed the flimsy window, reached through the broken panes to unlock it, and hoisted myself in the building before my brain could register how goddamn fucking noisy the whole procedure was. Flipping on the lights, I saw I was bleeding from a cut I must have gotten reaching over the glass. I hadn't felt a thing. As Howard gathered bags of marijuana and Etienne's expensive new scale that he had stolen from Lady Snow's, I smeared my blood on the walls in a detached, tongue-in-cheek gesture, thinking, man, this is so cool. My life has suddenly become a Doors song. We walked out into the hallway, thanking Christ there was no one there, left by the back door, and drove west on Sunset, doing the Mission Impossible reprise and laughing hysterically as we gave ourselves criminal nicknames. Howard was Brains, I was Fingers. Doug and Susie were properly amazed by our return, having cheerfully expected us to be dead or arrested by now. So we all got high and fell asleep like happy puppies, the pungent odor of ammonia wafting through our nostrils with the familiarity of an old friend. A couple of days later, I sold the scale to an old workmate of mine at Hughes Helicopters, an admin assistant who quit to become a prostitute because, quite frankly, it was a step up for her career-wise. She gave me 50 Quaaludes for the thing. I split our take with Howard. I saw Etienne at work today, he said, and related the conversation. Etienne, someone broke into my apartment, a deranged lunatic who stole all my dope and smeared blood on the walls. Howard, Jesus, that's awful. What a sick, sordid town this is. You're lucky you weren't home when those fucking maniacs were there. Etienne, how do you know there were more than one? Howard, I don't know, I think I read someplace the OEs work in groups. Anyhow, Etienne ended up going back to Toronto. Howard sold the lewds for rent money, still ended up short, and after camping around town for a few weeks with chance acquaintances he picked up in bars, had to fly back to his parents' home in Boston, where he was stuck until the following year. I had always felt that dealing with drugs was a path that would only lead me to ill fortune and perdition. Plus, who knows, some bastard might rob me. So I was impelled by my personal convictions to take all the drugs myself. I spent a month in the bathtub reading Sanctuary and Black Spring. It took me an inordinately long time to finish a page for some inexplicable reason. One night, as I was reaching the end of the stash, my girlfriend came into the bathroom. John Lennon's been shot, she said. Wow, I replied. Did Yoko do it? But she had not. And in reviewing my life, I saw that I had committed a petty, senseless, mean-spirited crime, spent a month in the bathtub stoned, my skin wrinkling like a bad suit, as I read books I couldn't have understood sober. John Lennon died, and to top it off, Yoko Ono wasn't even going to the gas chamber. And in this moment, the LA experience began to go sour on me. And once again, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of other words about LA in this book, including a one-act play, Pam. So maybe you can find your way to get it produced or something. All right.
About a year ago, a friend of mine, West Seattle gal, well, French West Seattle, who paints, decided she was going to put together some of her paintings and ask some of her writer friends to do some poetry. And so the 4 paintings you see here and here are Veronique's paintings. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. And so you can try and figure out which poem goes with which painting. Coastal dawn, on a cold Pacific dawn, in a damp bag, inside a damp tent, salt air, seaweed tang, and strong coffee permeate the tight air. The coffee drags me from our tent, ocean vista my reward. He knows this. He does this for me, to get my aching body moving, to begin a new day. Huddled tight on a driftwood log, coffee hot in gloved hands, we listen to gulls and heron call overhead, and gentle waves lap the sandy shore. Awash with sunset memories under blooming sky, we plan our day in early morning calm. As the chatter of day hikers invades, we hoist our backpacks and head out in search of solitude. Gray, a pantoum, On pewter palette of silver sheen, gray of grace and compromise, of gentle death and early dawn, and gray of trusting love. Gray of grace and compromise, of joyous sparkling waves, in gray of trusting love, death melds with dawning hope. Of joyous sparkling waves, of gentle death and early dawn, death melds with dawning hope, on pewter palette of silver sheen. Woodland magic. Dusty footprints track the trail before me, tracks no larger than the palm of my hand. How many steps hers to mine, my fibulae longer than her femurs and fibulae combined. Marching, dancing footprints of small pink boots and baby blonde curls brightening old-growth shadows. A tiny backpack bounces on her, over her denim dress as Bear Bear's white ears escape an open zipper. Beside twisted roots, bare knees to forest floor, she peeks inside a small hollow. Leprechauns or elves or woodland fairies, I whisper. Fairies, she sings softly, as though to call them forth. My girl, this child of tiny winged hiking boots, now grown with a child of her own, what wings will her little one wear? What hollows and caverns will he stop to explore? When I follow his small footprints on forested paths, will he imagine magic under mushroom domes? Will he see leprechauns or elves or woodland fairies? Will he sing softly to call them out to play? One more. Siren Forest sings. To see once again through an infant's eyes, sunlight dance through verdant canopy and shadows shiver on forest floor. To hear the silence and cacophony of the forest, wind rustle, rodents scuttle, the hammer of beak on bark. To inhale the fragrance of woodland decay and rebirth, fertile mix of moss and pine, of fern and salal. To sense serenity in natural quiet and minimalism. What, after all, is truly needed? To reach this destination alone, or perhaps with special others, lightness in the canopy, a crystal lake, respite at trail's end. To lunch, to stay a week, to rest muscles, mind, heart. Fresh mountain runoff cleanses hot, sweaty skin. Thank you. This book came out right on the cusp of, right before the pandemic, late 2019, and has had very little reading or attention. And I do want to say I have 3 memoirs here. All profits from any sales tonight will go directly to the farm workers, whatever it's called, farm workers, whatever. So I just want to put that out there.
Heat exposure, whatever.
Yeah. So if you're interested. So this is a book about my years as an expat, or an undocumented expat in Mexico City in the early 80s, and my attempts to reconnect with the women I knew there. This particular section is called Evelia. In the large plastic storage container of correspondence, letters brittle and stale with age and mildew, I discovered the only letter I have from Evelia. A letter I have no memory of having received. A letter Evelia dated April 15, 1989. I am overwhelmed with relief. I hold proof my friends survived the earthquake that devastated the massive metropolis in 1985. I had forgotten this letter, mired as I was in the emotional muddle of my life at that time. April 15, 1989, about a month before my daughter's birth. My life was as chaotic as ever, maybe more so veiled as it was by the unsolved murder of my youngest sister. After I'd left Mexico, after the earthquake of 1985 had devastated the capital city, I tried to find Avelia. I knew her hometown was in the worst hit area of the quake zone, and I knew thousands had disappeared, assumed dead under the rubble. But I didn't know where she was at the time of the quake. I sent letters I thought were unanswered. Now I know I was wrong. I hold the proof in my hands. In the blue ink on yellow graph paper, Avelia composed her letter, her flowing handwriting filling the page, front and back, at a precise slant, not a single error or correction to be found. In her beautiful script, Avelia tells me of her joy in receiving my letter, that her slow response was because she'd been away for 6 months. She assures me her friendship toward me has never wavered. At that time, it took 2 weeks or longer for letters to travel between Mexico City and Seattle. The 2 Mexico Exporta stamps show no postage markings, so I have no idea when the letter was mailed. It likely reached me only weeks, perhaps days, before my daughter was born on May 17, 1989. I wish I had sat down at the glass-top drafting table in our tiny rented cottage and scribbled a letter to my old friend, letting her know that all was well, that my baby would be born soon, that I would welcome her visit any time. Had I done so, I believe she would have responded. In mid-November 2015, I showed the return address to a few of my Mexican students at the college where I teach. "Is this in Mexico City?" I asked. "Sí, maestra, on the outside, not in the middle." "Is it good address? Is it a good address?" "Quién sabe," one said. "Creo que sí," said another. Despite the lack of robust confidence in the validity of the address, I responded to Avelia's letter 30 years after it landed in my Seattle mailbox. I wrote a brief letter, first in English, followed by my best attempt at a translation in my now rusty Spanish. I received no response. In 1989, I learned the dear friend who once saved my life when I was alone in Mexico City had neither forgotten nor condemned me for la brecha entre las dos, the gap that formed between us. Despite my failures as a friend, despite me choosing a man over my friend for no better reason than he didn't like her, despite all that, I did have a special place in my friend's heart after all. But again, like a fool, I allowed time and distance to come between us. Would another letter find her? Should I write again? Or is it time to let go and accept that Avelia is lost to me forever? What would a new letter convey? Where would I send it? And would she respond? I stumble over Spanish as I scribble my long overdue apology for allowing the challenges of life and distance to destroy a friendship that once, long ago, meant so very much to me. I scribble my truth, that I value our friendship deeply. I send my thoughts into the universe because I have nowhere else to address them, and I hope my old friend's heart receives my message.
Thanks, Leopoldo, and thanks C&P, and happy birthday to PoetryBridge. And yeah, I think I was just too intimidating with those poems. People were running away. I wanted to let you know that David and I had the same cover artist for our books. Omar Willie, who's a local everything man, but he's a photographer, artist, chemist, publisher, you name it, Omar can do it. And anyhow, we both love our covers, and I just wanted to point that out, that we have the same cover artist. And I'm going to open this one first. This chapbook came out at the beginning of the pandemic, or partway through, anyhow, Her Imaginary Museum. And this is a poem that's pretty old now. Yearning. I do not want to be remembered for my urine. In this, I differ from the Chow Chow and Welsh Corgi, who yearn to soak the earth, to imbue the foggy air with their unique pea sense, who nose through the streets in search of smells of dogs gone by and recorded for canine history until rain rinses hydrant and trunk. If only I could so shed skin or saltire as I tread my neighborhood, and thus plant in friends' hearts my deeds, my ways, my thinking, my art, civil equivalent of dog's liquid legacy. And my second chapbook also came out during COVID times. This is held together with tape and glue. And I called it that because there are a number of collages in it. And it was also how I was feeling. Relined. Look at the world as if for the first time. Beside us, rivers, a sense of passage to carry yourself into its next version. Or, I am wrong. All lines dissolve long before a few traditions quietly drift to a shadowy corner. Birds sing more complex melodies. Air brings salt to already salty face. You brought into this singular nebulous embrace patience to carry yourself into its next version. When will we fly? Not by chance. You sing with me to carry yourself into its next version. Lola, this is a river poem. I love your Blizzard River connection. This goes a different direction. This recently was published by Parks and Points, which is a very cool website I encourage you to look at. That most of the year is about parks and wildlands in this country and how to enjoy them. And then in April they do a poetry edition about the rivers. Beside us, rivers administer our sense of time through water's rush, like blood's throb through our internal channels, where currents surge faster when we're children, meander in our middle ages, run steady through spells of constancy, swell after storms. My sadness at last went when I tracked a stretch of the middle fork, silver splashing through duff and diorite, sun on its surface. I go to rivers for their indifference, rivers to set my crafts afloat, rivers to carry me out and deep. This next poem is an erasure from How to Keep Bees, which came out in 1905, and it's by Anna Bosford Comstock. And this was published in Pontoon this spring. Latitudes. In northern latitudes, we think we know cold dampness, frost, and chill. It is safer to winter if honey is good and enough, if honey be given. We never winter without 30 pounds of honey. We have given honey. In winter, it is necessary that honey pass through the city, a devotion of honey. In preparation for winter, we protect in every diameter the spaces between dried leaves. Many words are said for this method of wintering. It is a guard against extremes and sudden changes, warm, fine, a cushion, like covering with boughs of evergreen, our losses arrested, our scantlings in place. And these last couple of poems haven't been published anywhere, and they're really new. A kind of rage. Only in my 50s did I learn from my aunt that my mother, like her mother, seeing grocery lists as portents of degeneration, scorned them. So my mother returned from many mundane ventures with a white ceramic jar of tart British marmalade and an obscure cheese, over-odorous, until there were 18 of each, and a dozen oranges to rot in a fridge drawer. That catch-all death presenting a kinesthetic closure in black and green molds, in shriveling. References to falling night, a waiting wolf, or atoms of stars surplus. Thrust toward a cosmos of dusk, the sure coda, all cast in dust. This last poem is inspired by a game that Salvador Dali invented, and the idea is that the participants record over the course of, say, a week what they do at particular times of the day, and then reconvene and find out, like, what was your 5 p.m. and find sort of what the patterns or surprises might be. Examination of certain actions. 8 a.m. So many of her friends prefer sheets and dreams and pillows to feature. Awake for hours, she bursts with deeds as if she were a farmer, as if the papers at her desk, cows in want of milking. Not that her urban self has any clue how to milk another creature, despite having milked herself and been milked by her infants before their teeth came in. Adults, both now. How have decades passed since the nursing of her children? Vivid, as if from last week. Yet these minutes gawking at spring green on the maples across the street seem made of different stuff. A longer unit based on slower sand. Physicists back away from such questions. Most of us shrug, equally as thrown or ignorant. Although she adores her warm morning bed, she will always prefer to mark her 8 a.m.s with hustle, an urgency to begin. To begin.
This is a book I did. It's Vantage Press out of New York with 3 other people. And my friend Dennis Ford from Boston kind of came up with the idea. These are some of the poems that I wrote in this book. Interesting book because it was the first one I'd actually ever really truly published. So I was trying to stay within the parameters of my English major, the ghost of my teachers over my head, trying to make sure that I was keeping it in the English lexicon, as it were, but I was using my own abstract way of writing. So this is a poem. I've never read this before to anybody, so I'll read this to you tonight. This is called, I know the darkened window that grows colder than the night. I know the darkened window that grows colder than the night, the barren measuring cup of the nocturne recipe recites. The early hopeless moments that empty morning dreams ignite, with unexpected nightmares that leave one blinded by the light, with litanies and prophecies that dark thoughts systematically incite. I know the darkened window that is colder than the night. Ink blots crash black on white as specters float in fearful dark respite. Imagination's emerald garden haunts the room of childhood screams of fright, as deft apparitions trick the mind into never-ending opiate confessions with night. Sorrowful beauty, hear my cry, inside this dark foreboding tomb. Instead I wait for my escape in a sleep of blood inside this ivory womb. My fear of falling reaches unearthly heights and strange, unyielding gloom. No newfound freedom can stop the chill this alien wields best, the chill blue death or mind fusion that turns love into illusion, for a frosty joke on our disbelief and eternal disenchantment. I know the darkened window that grows colder with the night, the empty sad post-mortem twilight of an unimaginable sad sight. Eerily did I wait in car seats by a neon cigarette streetlight, with gnashing, crashing, snorting laughter, in gravel crunching down at night. waiting for some whiskey-eyed stranger to hoist me off to bed, and to a floor and rug awaiting in which to rest my feathered head. I have feigned my sleep and late-night banter, careful not to wake the ghosts. In elfish fever dropped memory's toad, poured wine down mouths of sadness, shed tears into fruit jars, open unto the lights of fortune cast. I know the darkened window that grows colder than the night, the blinding, blistering heart rage of infinitesimal soft light. I am a thin, uneasy pauper, yearning for a late-night solace light. I watch angry dreams break off, cry and die as they sink before my feet. I know the black madness of fear sweating off the heart, the broken strings of shattered cellos lost before they strike. Where's thy mirthy tidings, O remorseful sacrament? In flotsam jetsam appetite, I feel my belly tight, bulging and digesting that inimitable gadfly, famous love. Conditional by the hems and seams, she shreds her sacred garment tress, deceiving me with scraps of demon spleen I'm forced to eat till dusk. Of this I grovel, can only hope and beg and trust, for all my trouble, I might get this before I rust. And I saw another one in here that I wrote this a few years ago too. This is called November Love. Catch me, star-struck love bonnet. Carry me away on a grand milky wave with a trillion yellow, blue butterflies. Take me away, seraph-time princess. Free me from this sorrow. Let me grow young, not old. Grow bold, not bowed. Let tragedy haunt the metallic world. Eyes of bright gelatin. Proclaim the light is in me. I'm here to count the days, running in starlight and sunbeam prolixity. My unwielding pleasure is the pantomime of my escaping. I wear the rose-tinted glasses. I drink the light from the last forsaken rainbow. My final wish from my flesh is dismissed, to be a field of wheat, earthbound, heavenly enamored, in aquatic heat, a death above the valleys, resolute beyond desert silence. Earth's mercury lament is my breathing solar bliss. In empty, empty soft time, I am the storm of my own spirit walk, a gangly Sharon poser. A secret confidant in costume potpourri, a jet lightning's blackjack dancing and skip and shuffle, a stark motley color key smiler of equal laughter and belladonna sea sponge grief. And this is, since my friend Dennis contacted you, this is a poem I wrote for me and Dennis. You know, we all have our college friends, you know, and this was somebody I met in college. She came out here from Boston when I was going to school in Monmouth. And this is kind of like it's a playful poem to sound like a Hallmark kind of poem. So it's done on purpose to be this way anyway. I remember fishing with Dennis. I remember fishing with Dennis. It was when the leaves were burnt by August. The fingerling trout would tussle, while we on the shore would bustle, with poles we could not throw. Autumn's chill mixed its whiskey breath with the lost wisdom of summer's waltzing ghost. A river lay steady across the sullen Oregon fields. We walked through wild grass and berries on a path beyond his home. For he was the caretaker, trustee of the farm. Proud in our 20s, we shuffled in bouncing gait and Irish lilt beyond the kindred hop fields. The river lashed wild, ancient, mean, and cruel, though it was kind, benign, in wispy whirls. Fraught, fought, and floundered was my red-haired friend from Boston. We raised hell and beer cans high, proud with gypsy fortune's revelation. Too young to believe we could ever die, we passed the sinking boat launch, roaring like lions, bold enough to answer the wind. We talked of Truth and Mark Whalen, how they shared grapes from Catholic Mass, Ludlow Fair, and late-night drinking. All the while, the river kept rolling away our lives, into our secret dreams of treasure. Slowly we waited, volatile fishermen, with cigarettes, matches, and rim shots, onto the mail-bonding stern. Bravados, turbid with mythology, breathing young and free, we gathered sailors from the sea of endless seas. This is a book I did with Koen Woon. Everybody know Koen Woon? Koen's my brother in life forever. And I want to read these poems with Koen Woon here in the room, hopefully. I was hoping he'd be here tonight. And this is about a woman that I'm living with now that I knew since she was 17, and we're together. And her real name is Diane Austin, but she used to have, when she worked at a hamburger place, she had a little tag that said Jane, so people would call her Jane Austin. And she grew up in San Francisco. And this is called Jane's Place. Love once upon a time, or so it goes. They tell me that anxiety hampers your ability to remember things. Yet I remember you and love, and the rent was $75. A buckled house on Southeast Maine, a place for our coyote dogs, Zelda and Kivik. You gave the place to me, went back to San Francisco. Babe came over to stay. You and your chestnut brown swirled hair, lean-legged blue jeans and hippie work shirt, hipper and funnier than anyone. We drank and sang as Lori played piano, 2 beautiful kids staying out of trouble. 1,000 umbrellas could not stop the rain. And then I had another one here I wanted to read. This is one I worked with Kuhn on quite a bit, actually. And we would send stuff back and forth, and he would draw circles around my poems and arrows, and I kind of followed his lead, where you break things down to their core. This poem, I had it all over the place, and he helped me to organize it. This is called The Knights of Providence. Lime green winter lies frozen cracked in the Nazi night glass. Her blue breath fogs the popsicle ceiling. She says, call me Aurora Borealis. I step out from view in isolation abandonment, lonely in and out. We hold to be one. Smooth bodies, temporal bliss. Last night's wind blew sad. I walked Crab Road in soft Christmas light. Rain fell into the sea mist sleep. Dark firestorms, uneasy ghosts, a nervous sky. These are the nights of Providence, the promises lost, costed, purpose at any cost. Catch the moment, see me, for the future will lose me. Why is love a bedfellow to misery? A homely mistaken importance, the end of you and me. And I was talking my version of Kindle, trying to do it myself. I got this in the mail. You can tell, I'm a Luddite, But at least I got something back. And I love summer. And so this is one of the songs I wrote. You can tell I love summer when you hear this. Autumn is here again to murder all that summer was. The light retreats to wet, dark wastelands, the news of war, earthquakes, tempests, floods, the poor. Transients lurk streets, sleep on concrete and grass. Nature seems to die more each day as trophy hunters creep impious. Postnatal deception, their hearts drip golden wax flowers with lyre eye gloat. God's spirit is used to destroy and to divide. Where are we? It's autumn. 50 years plus ago they ambushed JFK. Fun-loving, seafaring, smiling man with people too bright for singletons. Dark, monstrous napalm, sweaty palms ready, reach for a payday. Ready, braced, dreaded, tattered trees. Autumn till June is a long tepid haunt. Diseased seashores, hallowed glens, freezer burns. Thaw the dreamer, color the white heat, illuminate the chrome debonair, caress our new blue, lost liberty. So I think I'm good for one more. And this will go out to everybody here tonight in a different way. This is called Late Winter Nights I Fear for Us All. Late winter nights I fear for us all, friends dying, friends growing old. This season of jagged frozen death, assassins in the shadows creep, shoot, stab, maim the innocent. Oil, bomb, crazy, prayer, revenge monsters. It's all rancid pornography in a light box. I fall to sleep with Beethoven. The news celebrates cowards. It's hard to rest in dystopia. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., awakened by my obtuse Burmese cat. I feed her, then wash the cat food off my hands. The water rises, nature is dying, my comfort is stolen time. Let children dream of optimum fate. Darkness is here to mock this mute moment. Nights of anguish, nights of light, nights of fear for all who sleep here tonight. Have a good night.
It's so great to be here after a long, long wait. And I told Leopoldo he actually gets the award for keeping poetry alive during the pandemic. He's been more stalwart and faithful to it than just about anybody else I can think of. Okay. Cold damp. On the last day of my illness, I shed bits of leaves. Above the creek, fog pulsed in and out like an aurora. I exhaled a miasma into the cold and lonely atmosphere. Perhaps the ancient alchemists knew more than we imagine. I thought to slake my appetite with a bowl of dried twigs, bitter tea, and a scavenge of dark and shriveled berries, shrunken like hope, hopeless like shards of ice strewn underfoot, a flawed and fleeting diamond in the sun. Tonight, the sky awash with stars, the only light in a broken world. Fearless. Not an ocean, but a bigger puddle, and I am an easy liar. This unholy heat is not a fever dream, a rumbling from the muse, an exhalation, or a lull upon the giving ocean left behind. But I have forgotten how to swim, lost in a gyre growing bigger when all I ever wanted was a puddle. In this sacrilegious heat and funnel cloud of fire, I stumble through forgotten prayers, but I am choked on smoke and drowning in an open chasm without a fearless, easy exit for a liar. Extinguished. Lose first all that you know how to lose. Youth, teeth, faith, and lovers. It's good practice. The woods are filled with wisdom and madness. Your hands are only so big, even cupped to the brim. You must spill out one thing to pick up another. Space falls into black holes, and we are out of time. Time has stopped curving back on itself and provisioning an infinite benevolent universe. Eternity gone wrong over and over again. Deer trails still call for a soft footfall, and mushrooms devour detritus of the forest, but surely you know they have left you behind. You wanted it all, but will lose your heart, your liver, and the belief anything could last forever. The cosmos is bleeding, the stars, surrendered, are laying down arms. Stardust. The 500 million animals who perished in the bush were made of stardust too. We are the earth beneath our feet, aggregates of nitrogen, sulfur, carbon, phosphorus, and iron. I don't read philosophy because I don't believe in God, but water, oxygen, and breath. If we more resembled the grass, we'd flourish, prosper, and fade in a season, fulfilling our reason for being. Spread roots, set seeds. No moral dilemmas, no egos, nor greed. Just food and shelter for others. With a flash and a spark, to ashes, to dust, to the stars. Violin. It rained, and yet the light came in with ease, poured out upon a table set with opulence of bread and cheese, butter, asparagus, and sweets. A smorgasbord of languages and endless cups of tea with my beloved brother. 2 dogs slept beside the hearth, dreaming endless canine dreams amid the laughter. It was enough, all I should ever need, yet still live so close to darkness, I still dream pagan mysteries of ice and breathing fur, howling through the night, heated by ignited flesh on flesh, while sugar sparkles on the snow. Beneath a fine-honed sliver of the moon comes a deep-throated clamor out of tune, singing like the winter roars, an insistent echo of life within the void. Hear the creak of a lone fir stroked by the wind, an off-key piano, the screech of an old violin. Accident. Effort brought me nowhere close to where I'd hoped to be, except an accident of open heart and grateful for the flaying. Whoever thought love would listen and bend to intention, reason, and rules? It's a bloody human disaster, a ruthless toss of the dice, a mystery not found in death but life. The veil a lie of brittle bones piercing eye to eye, or just a dry rustle with no heaven to ascend, no resurrection, just unperturbed decomposition, our absurdity divined in burned out stars and clumsy shuffled cards. We pour out tea from battered leaves, sweat-soaked palm to palm. We're broken lines of poetry, fractured chords of song. Sandwich. And this one starts with a quote from a Safeway deli clerk. I don't have a recipe for a Swiss cheese sandwich. Every desire could be fulfilled on the beach, but I need something to eat, and I don't want a broken shard of dead mollusk. I must have something live and pulsing, blue-veined with a heart or at least a tentacle. But is this a recipe for happiness? If I let sand sift through my fingers for an hour, where has the time gone? Is this a yearning to be swept into the surf with Swiss precision? A hunger never slaked by briny cheese, or a slack tide on both sides of the sandwich? Balloon. The square root of longing, the quotient of sky resulting from song. That's a line from Joanna Thomas. Another country, another continent. The unreachable pieces on each square, your rooks struck from the board, leaving you bare root pared to the bones. A king who lost his chance of taking a queen in the opening gambit. Your fatal mistake was longing. You try to forget, but the daily reminders you live in the quotient of X and Y. A bad place for a poet of critical eye. Shrunken balloon in a sky of only rain. The resulting darkness, long distance from you to the words of my song. And one last one. Tundra swans. After snow comes rain. The river overflows its banks, spills out across the fields, obliterates the crop stubble. I want to take you by the hand and show you tundra swans, a flash of white amid the fog, like lightning in the gray. The river rolls like thunder, our boots sink deep in clay. There are no words left to write. Our common language is the rain. Thank you.
Whew. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone who's read for rating. I'll just read some poems and get out of your hair. the year after my mom died, I went back to my old housing project, or what used to be my old housing project on 23rd and Court G, the Hillside Terrace housing project. I saw that they were 4 condominiums that now go for $500,000 each. But I also saw that like the sisters who were walking by, who were just trying to make it, and who were still getting like harassed, and people were still asking me for if I could get them drugs. So to keep from losing my mind, I wrote this poem. It's called the Hillside Terrace Memorial Commencement Poem. The double Dutch crew runs in the late day. They kick it and take off briskly. They elude the potholes of the changing same block, rebuilt as an Amazon trap. They fly past upturned lands. They fly as the soil is flexed from the hill, where the adults left are men, the men left are boys, and the children already dead before new buildings got sited. They fly past the block's starless air. They fly as men set trip and fall before shadows of stone crosses. The road is a mirage of the riverbanks, with gilded scars and ill-cast buckets, ritual stones that pave all progeny. They fly and become the red line gourd, an end and beginning in aspirate ground where children are parents to trap gods, where cops push hoods to the side of the road for the path of gangster soccer dads, where MCs pose to pop their white collars and make mixes from bones to Millie Rock to. The reenactors troll and patrol the Crip waltz for imagined lands. They rise over the set trip meridian, riding over skyscrapers and shelters false and gone, circling trains, treaties, and generations of blood calls. Thank you. One of the things that I was doing with this book is kind of saying my goodbye to Hilltop in Tacoma as it sort of fades into gentrification. And one of the things I had to do was make peace with the homies of my age who are now in their 40s and who just got caught up and are doing their best to make restitution. And this poem is that for me. This poem is called Song of the Triple OG Bird Rescue Man. Blood is the color that mixes late September. It tints the concrete of a late sunset mass. It makes a mass of niggas and blackbirds. The OG in white will take them. It is on the wings of those beat and broke in migrations, those caught up in wounds and rickety structures, those lost in aromas, poisons, and intoxicants, elusive until they couldn't breathe. The OG in white will bring them home. Elusive is the errant gangster disciple as he washes his pavement of red. Elusive is his second act with body bags and his church with invisible chimes, and his yellow tapes fluttering in the leaves and dust to dust coloring all around it. Lord, I'll go sweeping through the city where my hood niggas have rolled before. The old man claps and cleaner particles become a set of flying nightbirds. The old man claps and ruins of a playground become neither ruins nor a playground. The arc of the busted jungle gym lift and resheath their pipe swords, lift every rock that interacts with his ash as the swing set chains stop their hanging. At dusk, homegoings are everywhere. At dusk, agony moves through Anglican storefronts. Agony lies still in the gravel. Dope boys barely make their stops. Dope fiends run to the water. At dusk, the OG finds place after place to give rosaries and proper burials. I will stand someday by the river. Won't be back on this block no more. The OG in white will take them. The OG in white will bring them home. Thank you. This poem is about when I was teaching, and some of the students that I had at the time were encountering an old bully that I used to have, and I had to go back to the corner where I used to harass me and his friends, and I kind of had to snarl, and I got him to stop, and I got some businesses to kick them out and make them 86 them from the area. But it reminded me of the first time I got harassed there. And this poem is called Soft Boy Barbershop Death Fugue. A boy's first death is when men rob him of color. The first snap from creation, in a chair, in a line. The men remake him and make him dream of the river. Purple highlights are snapped in order. He trembles. The abyss becomes a buzz cut and a smack to his spine. The boy's first death is when men rob him of color. The men surround him, prod him, flash out their temper, then thrust their mask upon him in turns and in time. The men remake him and make him dream of the river. They prod and they chant, "The more my brother's keeper!" Yet the kept cattle boy is piecemeal entwined. The boy's first death is when men rob him of color. And then the kings are happy, finished, over. The blank-slated boy, their drum circle shrine. The men have remade him and made him dream of the river. In the potter's house, the one God eats the sparrow. In the potter's house, Sabbath is blood on the vine. The boy's first death is when men rob him of color. The men have remade him and made him dream of the river. Two more poems. This next poem is when some of my students texted me that the Tacoma Police Department was messing with them in the library, and I went down and I asked what they were doing, and they said loitering, and I said, in the poetry section? Then they got an attitude, and then it's like, what are you going to do about it? And we find the poem. I will tell you this is what I did about it. This poem for my young students kicked out of the Tacoma Public Library by the police for lingering is after Rudyard Kipling's If. This poem is called If My Niggas. If you keep your head on a life of swivels, in the walking shadow of perpetual fades, if you lose trust when all doubt your witness, and make allowance for guns and gats and blades, if you can't wait and can't be tired of waiting, or being lied about, but can't not survive the lie, or being hated, but cannot afford the hating, because you look too you and talk too wise, if in their dreams they dream of masters, if they think and make your thoughts their aim, if feet are the measure of triumphs and disaster, and your life can't afford them just the same, if you can't bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by mall cops and traps and fools, or watch the things you made broke and rebroken, then sold as not your own with worn out tools. If you can run from the game when its winnings are risked on your body's pitch and toss, with corpses swept at each beginning, and never a word or a breath about loss, if you can never betray your heart and sinew, and honor your kinfolk long after they're gone, and hold when the players take everything from you, then cry and say to themselves, hold on, if in the cavern of learning there is no virtue, and in the trap cave there is no common touch, if young ones in revolving tombs can hurt you, with men who count nothing and then count too much, if dead body dreams fill the unforgiving minute, no matter the distance or space loved ones fly, or triggers on the city or a river of sight, but to stay and ponder them is to die. One more poem. Yeah, I'm not Tacoma anymore. I wrote for Hilltop. I loved Hilltop more than anything in the world. I do not love Central Tacoma. So much of Tacoma that I know is gone. I wish everybody well. I would like to say I like the literary culture more than I do. I don't. But I wish everybody well. I wish people would not be cruel to everybody. I want everybody to be kind. Just not kind, but just be. I'm sorry for being. Forgive me if I'm sounding spiteful and old. This is my last poem. If you like the book, just for $15, you can donate to the Robert Lashley Pizza and Weed Fund, the most insignificant charity in the history of civilization. I will end with this lovely poem that I like, and it's kind of sweet. It's called Value Village Love Poem. Old jackets don't fit, love, but did they ever? Insignias and hats fade in the cycles of discount trend racks. Jerseys and Spanx contract arbitrarily, and scarves hollow in the clique lights without the heads that gave them meaning. Age and price may dictate our shape, but wherever you are is the boulevard. Let me adorn you a crown of price check rosaries. Let my love be the alms that never signal, for without you, hoop earrings are metal. Extensions just threads away from their orbit, away from their center and star. Let them price to infinity our posters and memories. Let them splice the hood to the meridians of invisibility. In my arms you are never gone. My dear around the way girl, dance with me by the sail colors. Time may erase all style to memory, but the intercom is playing our song. Thank you very much.